the fact that both these teams want to hit, no matter who it is so fun to watch.
It's hard to beat a team twice. That's how the old saying goes, right? But do the numbers bear that out? We've got the answer for you coming up. And what goes into the process of attempting to beat a team twice or beat the team that beat you last time? We're talking rematches on the SumerSports show today with Sam Bruckhouse. I'm Lindsay Rhodes. Hi, Sam.
Hey, Lindsay, how are you doing? I'm really excited to talk about this.
Yeah, we are. It's not just going to be us also. First of all, the reason why we're talking about it this week, we have two very important divisional rematches coming up this weekend. We've got the Rams and Seahawks on Thursday Night Football, and then we have the Bears-Packers rematch on Saturday Night Football. And we have a few guests on the show today to help us get ready for both of those broadcasts. We're going to be talking to Sam Schwartzstein from Amazon Prime's Prime Vision broadcast, a favorite for a lot of us nerds, that broadcast specifically. He's going to talk about Rams Seahawks, a game that will be on Amazon Prime this week. We're also going to talk to EJ Snyder from the Bootleg Football podcast. He also does a Bears podcast called Bear Era, and he's got some thoughts on this week's big NFC North showdown. And finally, we're going to talk to Chuck Bresnahan in just a bit, longtime NFL coach and coordinator who now works with us here at SumerSports as a scout. He's going to give us a peek behind the curtain and tell us what it's like for coaches preparing for rematches, the thought process that goes into that very specific chess match. First, though, the data. Sam, is it hard to beat a team twice? We have lots of data on this with 48 divisional matchups that happen every single year. How many of them are sweeps and how many of them are splits?
Yeah, so it's about half and half, which you would kind of expect when you're thinking about a game being played twice. There's a 50% chance, in essence, if everything works out as the NFL hopes it does in terms of parity, that you win one game and then you win the next. As you said, we have 48 of these matchups a year. Typically, we see somewhere between 25 and 30 sweeps, meaning that a team wins both games. So, slightly more often than not, you're getting a sweep. I think that makes sense given that, you typically have a certified top team in a division, then you have a certified bottom team. That team will probably end up winning twice. And then some of those other games are going to be competitive. But typically, it's a toss-up if you can really get two wins against any of your divisional opponents.
According to Sumer Brain, just looking at this year alone so far, 24 of the 48 divisional matchups have already taken place this year, been closed out. And we have seen, to your point about half and half, 13 sweeps and 11 splits. Two divisional matchups will be starting up this weekend. They haven't played each other at all, and that is the Eagles Commanders and the Bucks Panthers, who will each play each other again 2 weeks from now. So a quick turnaround, similar to the one that the Bears and Packers are facing. And we were wondering what kinds of challenges were inherent in that. So we have interrupted Chuck Bresnahan's scouting work to come walk us through that. He's currently working as a member of our SumerSports scouting staff that has compiled 2,500 college player evaluations for the transfer portal and over 1,000 evaluations for draft prospects, also getting us all the good details of who is good and in what way. So thank you so much for letting us interrupt that, Chuck.
Hey, it's a great interruption at the right time. Give me a little juice.
19 years is how long you coached in the league. So you have done this whole rematch thing quite a bit. How does the rematch factor impact a coach's preparation? The fact that you're going to see this team again, or you have already seen them?
The unique thing is when you get to that rematch, the rematch is one thing, but there's also the possibility of playing a third time in the playoffs. So you definitely have your work cut out for you. And I think the average fan may think that, it's easy because you know each other so well from playing each other so often. Then there's a lot of merit to that. And you can get kind of blindsided a little bit and want to do too much because you want to do something different and you get away from what you do really well. So I think you have to be really careful about that. I think one of the most important things we always did, and, John Gruden was big on this. Bill Belichick, of course, always big on self-scout. But Mr. Davis was really a big proponent of making sure you knew yourself as well as your opponent when you went into the second game against a team or that possible third game. So I think knowing yourself and knowing your strengths and weaknesses and trying to build on the strengths and obviously hide your weaknesses is really important when you get into these games, because it's a toss up. It's a toss of the coin. And, you may have dominated a team in an earlier game, but again, weather conditions, home field, whatever it may be, these are all some of the things that just play into the great dynamics of this game at this point in time in the season.
So there's so many of these variables, and I know that you had the scheme against some of the best offensive minds. Mike Shanahan was a division opponent. Marty Schottenheimer was a division opponent. How do you keep from hyper-focusing on exactly what they may want to do, given what you showed on film, versus leaning into that identity like you talked about?
Well, I think the biggest thing for us was we always tried to pick out, like I told you, our strengths and our weaknesses and try to work with that from the get-go. But then what we tried to do was not overanalyze the opponent, but to take things like, if you're going to play Marty Schottenheimer back when there was shoddy ball and all that stuff, you knew you had to stop the power up on offense. And so you were going to have 2 or 3 things that you had that weren't necessarily gimmicks for the week. It was things you did well that you knew you could rely on to at least, stifle some of that if they had any success. So you would break it down. Then with Mike Shanahan, you had to be ready to play the entire field, because he was going to use the outside zone, inside zone combinations with the bootlegs and the play action passes, and they were going to make you defend the entire field and try to wear you down. So it was knowing your opponent, but then again, letting your guys know that here's 2 or 3 things we're going to sink our teeth into, and not throw a bunch of new stuff at them and say we've got to beat somebody with gimmicks or new defenses or new pressures. Or let's go do what we've really, laid our hat on so far and built as a reputation, and then grow with that. So I think that's really important, to make sure you stay within yourself.
So let's say you have one game plan for, the first game. How much do you, without going completely away from your strengths and leaning into what might potentially be weaknesses in the interest of disguising what you're doing, how much do you have to change just because you've literally put it all on tape for the second one?
Again, I think that's there's a real fine line with that, to be very honest with you, because you want to make things a little bit different so that they're not used to, and they've got to practice. They may not have practiced against a certain look, but at the same time, you don't want your guys having to do things from different positions or different alignments they're not used to. So again, I think it's important that, one of the things that I thought was really important when you got into a second game matchup or a potential third game matchup during a season was we literally had not 2 game plans, but everybody talks about offensive coordinators. They have their opening script, 15-play script, 20-play script, and then they'll have a similar type thing they'll work on at halftime. We did the same thing on defense. So we would have a series of things that we did, and we did really well, but we would hold till the second half, if at all possible. Now, if we were struggling in the first half, it was, you did whatever you needed to do to get back on track. But if you could hold a series of things that your guys were comfortable with, and it may be a personnel grouping, it may be a different alignment up front, that you show them. But if you can have something that you come out in the first 15 of the second half and change that first 4 minutes or so of the second half, that can be game changing as well.
In some of these quick turnaround games, did y'all have a similar philosophy? For example, the Bears and the Packers, they faced each other 2 weeks ago. Maybe you don't want to put everything on tape, or maybe there's certain things you want to test, having an understanding of the circumstances of that game versus the game in 2 weeks? Or is it kind of you lay everything on the table, what works, and then you go back to the drawing board for the game a week or 2 later?
There's merit to that question, but it's a lot different from this standpoint as opposed to not showing stuff in the preseason, then all of a sudden coming into the season. You're in the season now. You're in November, December football. You've got to win. Every game counts. And for some teams right now, it's win or go home. And so you're not going to hold anything back. In the first game, if it was 2 weeks ago, you may have had a couple things that you had within your game plan that just like I said, holding for the second half, you may have said, let's hold it and see if we can get a win without using that in this first game and save it for the second game because it was something you knew that broke protection or defended a specific run blocking scheme or whatever. But again, at this point in time in the season, you throw everything you can possibly throw at him. And I think this is where, I love the saying, it's not about the X's and O's, it's about the Jimmies and the Joes. That's really important. But when you get to November and December football and adjustments that are made throughout the game, this is where you earn your reputation and your money as a coach in making the adjustments and letting your guys understand how quickly they've got to be able to adapt those on the field. So I think it all goes hand in hand at this point in time because you're playing for a spot in the ticket.
So I just wanted to follow about that because I do think that that's an interesting distinction that you said there. Obviously, there are changes that are being made. It's more adjustments, you're saying, from what didn't work or we didn't do well defending, in your case, in the first matchup, as opposed to let's just throw it all up in the air and come down differently for the sake of being different.
Yeah, and I think I forget who it was. I heard one of the analysts this weekend use the term Rolodex. They just start throwing things at them that they haven't seen. That's not really what I meant. I didn't mean you're just opening your playbook and calling anything and everything you can, but you're not holding anything back, especially when you're in that second game. First game, you kind of let it play out. Second game, you're doing whatever it takes to advance.
I want to touch on something else you said, which was it's the Jimmies and the Joes. The Packers have lost perhaps one of the best Jimmies or Joes in the league, if not NFL history, in Micah Parsons last week. That's probably going to change what they will do as an experienced defensive mind. When you lose perhaps your best player, perhaps one of the best players in the league, and now you're facing a play caller of Ben Johnson's ilk, what are some of the ways that you have to quickly pivot, given that quick turnaround, to account for the Jimmies and the Joes that you have on the field when an injury does come up?
And again, that's a perfect example. You have to now become creative, and you're not going to have a player that replaces Micah. That guy is special, and he was on fire at the time of his injury. But what you have to do now is sell the unit that you have ways to break protection, whether it be with a pass rush game or overloading a side with a four-man pressure, disguise. You have to get everybody to buy into it because it's going to be a collective effort to make up for that one guy. And it is the next man up principle. So whoever comes in and takes his place has to be able to hold his own, but he's not going to replace him. And you have to understand that. And you've got to be creative, and you got to come up with ways that you think can attack some of the thing that Ben and the Chicago offense does well.
I can't wait for both of these matchups. They're going to be so fun. And they were already so closely contested the first time around. And now there's reason to expect differences in both of these matchups. I'm fascinated. Before we let you go, give us an example, an anecdote perhaps, of like a chess match that you found yourself in against one specific coach who really, we always talk about this when we get into the playoffs in particular, where like it's a chess match between this coach and this coach. Who was that guy for you?
Well, the biggest one, and it was funny because you brought it up early, was, Mike Shanahan playing against him. It was always a chess match because personnel wise, you knew what Mike was going to do, but you had to have a plan of attack on defense to be able to stabilize and basically bend not break within the first quarter and then settle down. And we always save something different for the second quarter, but Mike was masterful at testing your support by motions, formation adjustments, things that always put you on edge, and then misdirection plays. And when you played him in Denver, he was going to get you running sideline to sideline because of the altitude difference. And you would have guys tapping out in the first series, and they'd come to the sideline. You looked at them, they looked like they had already played 4 quarters, and they had to get their breath back and then get back on the field. But that was always a chess match. And then the other one that was always very, very interesting because of their success that they were beginning to experience at the end of our success was the New England Patriots, whether it was Josh McDaniel or Bill O'Brien. It was always Charlie Weiss. It was always kind of a chess match on how you attack the protection, how you tried to affect Tom Brady at his early years and get those things going. So this is fun. I mean, this is when you really get excited as a coach. And I guarantee you the guys, Coach Hafley's going to have some sort of answer for losing, his stud. And he's going to come up with something to create a pressure atmosphere or simulated pressure to try to, get Chicago off balance just a little bit, whether it be the quarterback or Ben Johnson as a play caller.
Chuck Bresnahan, thank you so much for your time. We'll let you get back to your evaluations now, and we will have more on those next week when we discuss the transfer portal with Mike Mayock, and I cannot wait to see and discuss all of the draft evaluations. It's right around the corner, my favorite time of year. What's your position group that you are scouting?
Inside linebackers.
What is your broad take on the inside linebackers this year in the draft?
I think it's a really solid group. There's a lot of versatility. But it's kind of a mix. There's some old school style backers as well as the more new style as far as coverage linebackers that may be a little bit more undersized, but bring athleticism and speed and explosion to the field. So it's going to be fun. It's a fun group to look at and excited to see where this goes.
Same here. Thank you so much, Chuck.
Thanks, guys. Great job as always. Appreciate being on.
All right, back to the rematches now. I legitimately cannot wait for these games this weekend, Sam. These are the top two teams in the NFC right now in Rams Seahawks, the only ones with 11 wins, the leaders in scoring differential. Seahawks have outscored their opponents this year by 163 points. Rams have outscored theirs by 159. Those two numbers are by far the highest in the NFL. Next closest is New England at plus 106. Then we've got Houston, surprisingly, at plus 95. Rams obviously won the first meeting between these two teams in a very close game, 21-19. So they are currently the top seed in the NFC. Seahawks are the 5. That could change. Clearly massive implications here in this game. And for more on the game, let's welcome in one of the people who are going to be broadcasting it, Sam Schwartzstein from Amazon Prime's Prime Vision broadcast. My favorite way to watch a game. Sam nodding his head in approval. Same. Welcome, Sam. It's so good to see you.
So good to be on the show. Thanks, guys.
What a great game for you to get to dig into. And I know that you are knee deep into prep at the moment. What are you most looking forward to seeing play out in this matchup?
I'm excited to see how rematch goes, because I think there's a lot of talk about 13 personnel usage for the Rams and how unique it was. We're going to do a lot of talk on it, but I want to make sure that people understand that this isn't like a identity change for Sean McVay. He still wants to be the 11 personnel group, but what is so fun is he is a hot hand coach. They have high target rates to Puka Nacua when he's going, high target rates in the red zone where Devontae Adams or even Colby Parkinson, Stanford legend, in the red zone. But it's what they do is when they want run over 40% of plays in 13 personnel, 3 tight ends, they're 3.6 yards per play higher than when they're under 40% usage. So what I mean by that is he'll use it, and in that first matchup, it wasn't working great. If you watch the film, it did have some good use, even though the Seahawks matched with nickel, but they have a big nickel and Emanwari, so it's a little bit different nickel than if I were to say the Giants playing nickel with Andrew Phillips. So it's a little bit different of approach that they have. There were some plays that were called back, but with Devontae Adams likely not playing, I think it's a big opportunity to see 13 personnel come back. And then how do they use them? One of the fun things about this game is you're watching film, and if you don't use the next-gen stats or the pro version, you're trying to figure out which tight end is which, because they all wear the same numbers. It's 89, 84, 87, and then you have Ferguson who's wearing 18 to look a lot like 17 or 12 for the wide receiver. So there is so much minutia with how Sean McVay and his staff, even picking the numbers for their players, is to confuse the defense pre-snap.
And perfect segue to point out one of my favorite things about Prime Vision, and that is, and I said this before the last meeting, that this is the way I want to watch this particular matchup, because you guys have the player identifiers that happen pre-snap, which help me. I have ADD when I'm watching, and so I tend to just kind of you know? And so in this case, I'll go, that's where the tight ends are. There's 3 on the field right now. There's 2 on the field right now. And so I really love that for this matchup in particular, I get to watch it in this way.
Yeah, with Parkinson split out, it's different than when Ferguson split out. When Parkinson's in the backfield, similar from Ferguson's in the backfield, and using the player tags are going to help us try and identify what they're trying to do formationally and how that will dictate what the Rams do on offense.
And I think that's just as exciting on the Seahawks side of the ball as well, because here's a team that loves to run 12 personnel. They'll throw out 21 personnel. They'll throw out 22 personnel. They'll make it look different with motion as well. What are your thoughts, especially given, like you said, the Rams kind of turned into an 11 personnel team last time when the Seahawks were there in against the Colts and against the Rams several weeks ago? The Seahawks kind of turned into an 11 personnel team by the end of the game. What are you kind of looking forward to with the Seahawks personnel groupings and where their offense may go?
Well, I think for them, it's Rashid Shaheed now being more implanted into the offense could be a big difference maker. There were a lot of times he was open in the previous game that they didn't hit him, right? And I felt like the Rams kind of knew that going in, that he's running these sacrificial go routes or the for the love of the game routes. And I think that now that they're going to try and incorporate him, and I think Torrey Horton's a great player, or whoever they throw out as the third wide receiver, is going to be a huge value add for them. But I still expect them to do, we call it the play action tax. You know, they're going to run the ball and they're not going to be good at it, but they're going to make you have to step up and make you trust it, because Kenneth Walker, Zach Charmaine, they can break out the big long runs. A success rate run is not going to be where they're at, but I think there's some big opportunities, and then it's all about how do I get to that play action pass, which they're one of the best in the NFL.
They're so fascinating, and I love that we get to talk to you about this team, because you're on the same wavelength in terms of, like, it's great that they continue to run the ball with the frequency that they do. That doesn't mean that they're good at it, but it's still so valuable for their offense. Like, they've just been such a fascinating offense this year in a lot of ways, because I think people very casually look at the Seahawks and the rate at which they're running and they go, oh yeah, they've got a good running game, and then take it personally if you say otherwise. It's strategic. It doesn't, I mean, I hate to say it doesn't matter, but it kind of doesn't matter, right? Because it's setting up a bunch of other stuff that they're able to do successfully because you're scared that they might run it. Or not scared, that's not the right word, but you have to account for the fact that they might run it because they do it so frequently that that's a real threat.
Well, it's funny, what we look at is, and maybe you guys at Sumer can do something similar, it's the run action plays, grouping them together as an EPA per play or a success rate versus all of the plays. So when you're play action, to set it up, how can we actually evaluate that the run that they're committed to is actually setting up that play action? And when you look at just the run action plays as a whole, that unit is one of the best in the NFL. So because they're tied together, you know, when you're running 96 zone, I don't know what they call it, but we called it 96 zone, and you're running 96 zone pass off of the top of it, we don't care what each plays individually got if we're running them back to back. We care about the aggregate yards that we got. And so when you group those together, you can see they're actually a great deep offense in terms of their run action game, not necessarily just their on the ground run game.
I think it's been excellent how this has gone. And again, everyone should tune in to this game on Prime, should tune in to Prime Vision. The production starts at 7. Again, we'll be coming on at 8. Because this is, in terms of coaching, scheme, players on the field, athleticism, this is such a great game to capture. And I think giving the discussion about the run, the Rams didn't, and they typically don't respect the run in terms of the bodies on the field. Now, a lot of those guys are safeties, but by all indications, they're going to trot out dime, and that's what they're going to do against 12 personnel. It's what they're going to do against 21, 22. They may run another linebacker on. What do you think the implications of that for this game are going to be?
So both sides of the ball, and I was talking to a friend this morning about it. That friend being my 2-month-old daughter. I didn't know myself, but we're talking this morning. Just try to practice talking to her. But the fact that both these teams want to hit, no matter who it is so fun to watch. You'll have safeties screaming in the box. When you see 13 personnel for the Rams offense, that strong side safety at the snap, the moment he sees the back turn for Stafford, he's sprinting into the box, creating a favorable box count. Looks too high pre-snap, but the moment they see something, and it could be either side. Okada, he's most likely playing strong when they align at the start, but they're going to try and bring that safety down. On the other side, it's the same thing. Just like you said, Stan, they're going to stay dime personnel. They don't care who it is, but they can do that because everyone's a thumper and everyone wants to play within the scheme and do it. And at the end of the day, their D-line, they'll run through you. Both D-lines are set up not to be flashy. Oh, they're not going to D-end you and they're practicing their stick move and their rip. No, it's we're going to run through you. We're going to run games up front, stunts. And I think what will be interesting for the Seahawks defense is how much they blitzed in that previous matchup. It could a lot of it been, hey, we're trying to match your aggressiveness in that 13 or running downhill, but they doubled their blitz rate from the regular season in that game to over 40%. So will they want to continue to bring that extra body, the extra rusher to try and get in Stafford's face? It just both teams are playing with such energy and with such and willingness. It's just a really fun thing to see that, hey, we have two guys that we all think of as elite play callers, head coaches, play callers, but probably what they've done the best is culture. And you don't really get to see that a lot. And now with both teams leveraging analytics more, it's kind of like these are our teams. These are our perfect teams. As people who watch the game similarly.
I have a question that's related to analytics and their usage, these two teams, and it has to do with the fourth down. I feel like this has been one of the themes of the year, is we have seen it started to trickle down, like more buildings clearly are buying into this, going for it if you're close to your the goal line, as opposed to taking the points and kicking the three. And we saw that in the first meeting too. The Rams went for it on fourth 3 times. One directly led to a touchdown, one converted and led to a touchdown further on down the drive. And then the other one led to good field position that ultimately set up another touchdown. So all 3 actually ended up being beneficial for them. And mathematically, if they'd kicked field goals each of those times, they wouldn't have won this game because it was so close. So I'm curious about what you have observed about these two coaches and where they kind of are in that go for it on fourth versus not in like the more old school approach. Where do they fall?
Well, we had the great thing that we do this right after I have a production meeting with my producer, Scott Carpin, because that was a big deal of what we were talking about. We were going through the data to the highest run rates on 3rd and 3+. So these are teams that want to get into 4th and short, and they're doing it. So on Prime Vision, you're going to hear us say at 3 yards and in, this is a go for it. So we're telling you ahead of time on 3rd down what yardage you need to get to on 4th down for this to be a go. That's how teams operate. Teams can operate down on 1st down. We're just showing it to you on 3rd down. So we're just trying to mimic the book. And that's clear what each of these teams are doing is they're letting game management people. Brian Ayers is the one for the Seahawks, and Nicole Blake is the head of analytics for the Rams. Both fantastic people that can help out how they're operating in game and their willingness to run in situations that might not be valuable. So the problem with the Rams is it's actually their weakness. They have the lowest yards to go on 3rd down, 5 yards, but they're pretty pedestrian at converting 3rd down. So it might be 6 yards. I got to get my numbers right, but it's still the lowest in the NFL. And then their willingness to run 3rd and 3+, they only have a 21% success rate. That's second worst in the NFL. So there are some issues on 3rd down that they need to figure out to be that super hyper elite. Fortunately for them, they're by far the best 1st and 2nd down team. The Seahawks are the second best 1st and 2nd down team. And so both teams have this identity of how they're going to use 4th downs to benefit them. The Rams, I think, what was great in that first series last week, 4th and 4, they go for it. 4th and 7, they go for it. I'm looking at the next gen model. No real strong decisions either way. So when you see toss up on our broadcast, we're saying there's not a 2% or more swing in either direction. And why we pick 2% is 60% of the time when there's a 2%, coaches, you follow that direction. And so it helps us know when an obscure 2% is showing, hey, this is actually a good time to go for it because you go for it in very similar 2% scenarios. Now, they are willing to go for it on coach's decision. Now, ultimately, conversion probability from down and distance is a big factor in why we're telling you to go for it in situations. But it really matters how confident are. If you're confident in Matthew Stafford to find Puka Nacua on 4th and 4 and 4th and 7, which I am too, go for it. It's different than, league average is saying your 4th and 4 is going to convert at 40% of the time or 32% of the time. No. What's Puka Nacua going to do today with Matthew Stafford?
And another analytical topic that we'll finish off before you let you go. Very close to home for you is the kickoffs. These two teams are very unique in what's popping off for them for kickoffs. Seattle, one of the best teams in terms of opposing average starting position. We had the dirty balls from Cardi in the early part of the year. Now he's no longer the kicker in LA, but we're seeing a massive touchback rate for them as well. What are some of the unique elements of these two teams in particular with regards to the kickoffs?
I think the touchback rate I'll start with first. The problem with the kickoffs is we've been losing time to practice. And so teams, if you don't want to practice it, if you're going to say we're going to give it to the 35-yard line because we don't think we'll practice well enough to save 5 yards on play, because I believe you practice it, you can stop a team at the 30. I think that's extremely valuable. There's fewer plays in the game because the time's down. But if you don't think that, and you don't want to risk giving it to Rashid Shaheed, which they did not want to in that first matchup, then they're going to kick touchbacks. But you also gain back probably 20 minutes of practice on third down, which is where a lot of these coaches are freaking out, especially if you're an offensive play caller. Now, for the Seahawks, they have Jay Harbaugh, who's fantastic at this. They do some unique things. Sometimes they'll put 2 defensive linemen on the kickoff cover team, which for me is, when I was looking at testing, that was like I loved it because every touchdown happened because you had a D lineman in space. So if you go back and watch XFL kickoff returns, there's some D lineman playing the L3 or the R3. They get beat. So they're doing some unique stuff with it. So more power to them. I think what will be a big difference maker, though, is teams are scoring an extremely high clip when they start on opponent territory. And now you can do that if you're getting a return. And so if the Seahawks aren't going to kick it deep, or the Rams aren't going to kick it deep, the Seahawks lose that advantage. But if the Seahawks want to play their advantage and play that risk, they can, starting the Rams further in their own territory or the risk of them getting out. I think that's what makes the dynamic kickoff so fun, is there's no guaranteed spot where you're going to start with the ball.
Real quick follow on that, zooming out league-wide, because obviously, and Sam alluded to, you are particularly invested in this kickoff. I think we should probably, the people who are listening who might not know, Sam is the guy who essentially came up with this entire concept. But Sam came up with it, implemented it in the XFL, and then the NFL has adopted it. Which of the teams have you seen lean into adjusting for this specific approach the most? And which ones have not? Like, just to kind of put some stuff on our radar about like which teams are really, in your opinion, maybe, or maybe just the first part of it, which teams are really
coverage standpoint. The Carolina Panthers, Eric Eager is a close friend of mine. I think he's had a big impact on, I think we're all sports analytics fans here. We also love the game too. Like we're not watching a spreadsheet. I think some people think that, because you said a number, you're a spreadsheet person. What they're doing with their dirty ball kicks, which were so strong, I ruled them out of the game. So like I was very nervous to see it. Lindsay, you texted me earlier in the year, like, yeah, what is this all about? Like I have a suspicion here, and I was like, oh, people are on. And so they're doing a great job there. From a return standpoint, I love what the Bills are doing. They have a clear number one in Ray Davis getting the ball, and he is trying to hit it up the middle. Now, for me, running to the edges is the most important, because what people don't realize is the play is mimicking what the play looked like if you stopped the film when the ball was caught in a traditional kickoff. But because of uniformity, we spread you out across the entire field on this version. In reality, you were only 25 yards apart, not 53 and a third yards apart. So people on the opposite side of the field going to try and get you on the edge, that's where you're wide open. Not enough teams are hitting it there. But what the Bills do so great is they're pressing the front side like it's inside zone, outside zone. And then Ray Davis will cut up the middle. And that's what he did on Prime Vision earlier in the season, is they set up all their blocks really effectively to then get into opponent territory. And I think they have some of the most opponent territory starting points. And it's really won them a couple games by being able to leverage the dynamic kickoff return.
I love it. There's so many like very, very specific details this season in particular. I mean, always, but now that analytics are kind of taking hold in these different team buildings, I think there's so much more to look into that isn't really obvious on the surface. This game, a perfect example of that. Sam, thank you so much for your time. we will be watching Thursday night. Coverage starts at 7 Eastern, Amazon Prime. And then you click down to the other options and you go to Prime Vision because you will thank me later. If you're listening to this podcast, this is the broadcast that you should be watching. I 100% promise you.
Yeah. Also, thanks so much, guys. Always a pleasure. This is really fun. The dream come true to get to chop it up with you guys.
So kind. Literally our pleasure, as is the ability to welcome in our next guest to get nerdy with us about all of the aspects of the other big rematch game of the week from the Bootleg Football Podcast and the Bear Era Podcast. EJ Snyder joins us to talk Packers Bears. Hi, EJ.
Hey, Lindsay, good to be back. Sam, good to see you as well. This is a fun one. I'm excited about talking about this game. It was sort of one thing 2 weeks ago, and now it's another thing.
So I want to get your thoughts on that because the last meeting between these teams was a close game. Packers won. I want to be careful about the way that I phrase this, I think, because obviously I want to give credit to the Packers. But since the Bears are the team that's kind of on the come up, I think, whereas we expected the Packers to be good, my takeaway was primarily about the Bears, to be honest. I know that there are no moral victories, but for me, this felt about as close as you could get to that for the Bears. I was really impressed with their performance. What was your takeaway, EJ?
Yeah, the same, and you're correct. There are no W's when you don't get one in the NFL, but there are messages and warnings, and the Bears sent both. And I think everybody on both sides of this rivalry knows that this game is now balanced in a way that it hasn't been for the last decade, quite honestly. And everybody in Green Bay can say, rah, rah, yeah, we won. And they did. You're correct. They deserve credit. They played a good game. They didn't back their way into the victory at all. But if there were Packers fans that weren't worried, they weren't paying attention.
And I think it's interesting, too, saying if they weren't worried, because now they are worried. Now they don't have Micah Parsons. And that's not to say he generated a lot of pressures against the Bears. He had a good game. But I thought that he had a very unique Micah Parsons game against the Bears, and now he's not showing up against what has proven to be an immensely mobile quarterback in Caleb Williams. What are your thoughts on the adjustments or the advantages that the Bears may have as a result of Micah Parsons not being out?
Well, it's a great question, Sam, and absolutely, when you remove a talent from either side of the ball as big as Micah Parsons, it's not replaceable. That's pretty obvious. We're talking about a top 3 edge in any metric you want in the NFL. And then if we look to the other side, we'll talk about Christian Watson, I'm sure, but he changed their offense. And you basically remove 2 huge impact players. And again, Lindsay said it, you were talking about a close game last time. It definitely shifts the balance. But if we're going Packers centric on what Micah has done for their defense and what they'll need to do without him, again, he's top 2 or 3 in any meaningful measurement you want in terms of pressure, but I don't even think that really covers his impact, because if you really go to the tape and you dig through what offenses were doing every week to try and twist and contort themselves to try and stop Micah Parsons or limit his impact, and he still was able to affect the game. Having a player like that out, we were talking before we started recording about gravity. Micah Parsons' gravity for the Packers defense is immense, and it's no longer there. So when you were talking about a very even contest before, they are going to have to make adjustments. I actually think they're probably going to do it with Quay Walker. Quay Walker is their best pass rushing inside linebacker. I know you're a huge Edgerrin Cooper fan, Sam, and he allows them to have that extra half second in coverage, but Quay is the guy they're going to send from the middle of the alignment. They've been doing that a lot with Micah this year. They're going to move him around. They're going to give him matchups, again, sometimes to set up the stunt, sometimes to pay off the stunt, but that is really what Hafley's going to do, is take Quay Walker and make him his movable piece. Is Quay Walker Micah Parsons? He's not, but he is effective in that role. And that's the way they're going to have to try and make hay, because again, the whole reason the Packers went out and got Micah Parsons is because they weren't generating pressure with their current lineup.
Yeah, and I want to ask about, in particular, the matchup that you were talking about, because the film showed to me, and it popped up in the stats as well, that it seemed like the Packers were trying to attack Jonah Jackson. Do you think that's what is going to happen again? Now, that's definitely probably the weak link on their line. He's been very good this year, but it seemed like Micah was trying to get in advantageous positions on Jonah Jackson to create interior pressure to thus flush Caleb out. That seems like something that you think Quay Walker is going to do. Do you think because it's not Micah Parsons, it becomes a little bit more of a spread attack, or do you think it's still going to be an interior pressure game on Saturday.
I think they'll try the interior pressure game. For me, it's a tale of two cities on Jonah Jackson. For the first 6 weeks of the year, he was not good. He was not winning, and a lot of fans, including myself, had questions about his viability, as you said it, the weak link on this line. The past 6 weeks, he's been kicking some serious ass. Jonah Jackson has gotten himself into gear, and if you watch his play, especially in the run game over the last 3 weeks or so, he's mauling dudes again. He is absolutely annihilating defenders. And I think that's what the Bears are going to lean on more so than the pass. Everybody's really concerned about Caleb's ability to read Hafley's coverages and adjust and get the ball out quickly, play in structure, all that stuff. I think Ben Johnson's going to run through the Packers' face until they stop it. And I think Jonah Jackson is a huge part of that. And again, if you're watching the early season tape as a defensive coordinator, you go, this is the guy we want. Like, this is the matchup we want to get one-on-one with this guy. If you watch the last 5 or 6 weeks of tape, you go, I don't really know who we're going after. If it's pass rush, we're probably going after Trapillo because he's a rookie. But in the run game, he's been beating guys up as well. And again, he gets his fair share of just one-on-ones because everybody else, I mean, Joe Thuney's been locked down the entire year. One of the quietest, best performances in the NFL this year. Makes no noise about it, as is typical of Joe Thuney, but he has been crushing folks. Dahlman, again, started slow for only maybe 2 or 3 weeks. Then he got really good. Jonah Jackson was the next domino to fall. And again, Darnell Wright is just over on the right tackle side going, guys, this is great. I don't have to worry about y'all's jobs. I could just do mine, and I'm really good at that. So the Bears line from week 1 to now is a huge transformation. And there's not a lot of weak spots if you want to attack them anymore.
Yeah, and EJ, you nailed it. And I love when the eye meets the AI, Lindsey. I've said it time and time again. You look at the progression of his season as you add those cumulative weeks in terms of SumerScore. Right around week 9, it becomes league average. Right around week 14, it becomes a little bit better. And now he's sitting at a quality start SumerScore for the season. So the eye meets the AI. I'm really glad that you mentioned that, EJ.
And Joe Thuney is our highest scoring guard in score. He might be doing it quietly, but certainly not on our end. It's like red lights flashing every time. Drew Dahlman is number 2 in SumerScore at center. Darnell Wright is in the top 10 at offensive tackle on the right side. Left side hasn't been as strong, but what I found very interesting about this matchup 2 weeks ago, and you already mentioned his name, Ozzy Trapillo, they've played 3 different guys at left tackle, so that clearly is not necessarily a good sign. But in that Packers game, Ozzy Trapillo played and had the best SumerScore game for a Bears left tackle all season long, which was an 8, which is like a Pro Bowl caliber performance, which I was shocked by. Like thinking, okay, the weakness here is left tackle. And then he's facing Micah Parsons and all this, like, oh, and then there you go. That's the best game that we're going to put up all year long. So I think that's fascinating going into this matchup, just taking that snapshot of the line. But also you mentioned the run game and how you think that they're going to run into their face, or however you worded it, which was more poetic. The Bears run game has been so interesting to me, and I think it's related to the line as they always are. But this was, I thought, a weakness of the Bears offense last year. I mean, I came into the season looking at Kyle Monangai as a guy who was drafted very late that might actually, for fantasy purposes, drafted him a ton, because I was like, the run game just wasn't good. They might be looking to add somebody there, and that might be why they drafted him. The Bears run game on early downs, number 1 in the NFL in rush yards, number 2 in EPA per rush. Like, it's fascinating that you think that this team, that what they looked like last year, that they've turned into a team that is literally top of the NFL when you say, okay, it's the early downs. You could do anything. If you run, you're going to be the best.
Ben Johnson, y'all. Like, this is Ben Johnson's impact. If you think that he wasn't the guy for any reason, stop thinking it. Like, he is clearly the guy. And if anything, he just kind of had to slow it down until the offense caught up. Like, he was planning all this. And again, the execution on the offensive line early wasn't there. The execution from the running backs was certainly not there. The weird disparity early in the season with the Bears run game is that yards before contact was top 10. Yards after contact was bottom 5. Like the running backs were not paying off the space. Everybody kept saying, oh, the line can't block. No, the line is blocking it up to literally a top 10, 12 level, even in the early going with all their inconsistencies. But largely Swift between the tackles could not pay it off. And that has been a historical weakness of his game. Interestingly enough, and this is coming from a guy that has been notably critical of DeAndre Swift. I think that's a fair way to say it, because he is very good in space. He is very good in the pass game, and he's great outside, but he's terrible inside. His vision has been historically awful, which Phillies fans will tell you, yeah, that's why we got rid of him. In the past,
We also saw that on Hard Knocks.
Yeah.
Right? Like that was the problem with him even back then.
100%. Like this is not a new thing. It was on his scouting report coming out. And here you go. In the past 2 or 3 weeks, mea culpa, DeAndre Swift between the tackles has been way better. And that is coming from one of his largest detractors in that area. Watching this run game sort of get to where Ben knew it could get to and was just sort of waiting for everybody to catch up, coaching them up and saying, hey, we're not that far away. There's a few things. It's going to be great. Trust me. We're there now. And this is the fully operational Bears run game. And that scares everybody. And it should scare the Packers.
Yeah, I'm just like chiming in here with backing up stats because EJ, you're singing the gospel over here. We have some traits that are looking at some of those inside run stuff, season over season. Great data scientist Quinn McLean at SumerSports, and the inside run stuff is starting to look better. He's kind of at an impact starter level there now, according to our Sumer traits, and it's exciting to see all this stuff come together, both on the field and on the spreadsheets.
Yeah, it's great when they match up because, again, a lot of people will look at a run game at a very surface level and say, hey, Ben's a run guru. We're 4 weeks in. The run game sucks. This is a failure. And you're like, hey, hold on. The line is blocking it up the way he's calling it. All the investments in the offensive line, to your point, Lindsay, like the difference between this team last year and this team this year. Yeah, you went out and rebuilt 4 of the 5 spots on the offensive line. Who knew? The answer is everybody knew, but Ryan Poles couldn't get it done. Ben, I will die on this hill, probably said that in his interview. Like, I would love this job. I grew up here. I think it's a great town. You will rebuild the offensive line. And I think Ryan probably said, yeah, sure. And Ben said, no, not what you think. Like, we are going top of market across the board. That's what I'm used to. I built a very good, young, powerful line in Detroit. That's what my offense runs on. Know that, know me. And Ryan went, oh, or Kevin Warren went, oh, okay, whatever you want. Yeah, sure. We'll go get the top center. Everybody knew Dahlman was going to Chicago before the combine. Like, you were all at the combine. I was there with you. Like, everybody was like, yeah, Drew Dahlman's going to Chicago. Like, everybody knew that this was occurring. It all drops into place. And sure enough, the run game is transformed, completely different than it was last year.
What about the passing game? No Rome Odunze potentially? Like we're, injured and we don't know if he's going to be on the field. He is the target share leader on the season for the team at 22%. So regardless of what he's done with those opportunities, they have continued to give him opportunities, at least to a high degree. So if he is not there and you lift him off the field, what does that look like?
That looks like Ben Johnson taking a victory lap for this year's draft, quite frankly. Colston Loveland at 10 overall. And again, Colson started injured. He had limited impact early in the season, but you could see very early, even in those limited targets, that Ben trusted him in a way. Like big downs at the end of games. We got to get this to get off the field. He would throw it to Colson Loveland, a rookie, a tight end, a position that typically takes longer to develop than others in the NFL. And Ben was resolute. He's like, nope, Colson's my guy. And there wasn't a lot of that. So there wasn't a lot of volume. So people looked away from it. But now that Colson's been healthy, he's in there. He's developing that rapport. Like Colson, you could honestly say is the leading target in this passing game offense, especially when Rome's not on the field. I know target share says otherwise, but again, that leans into the early season data as well. And then you look at guys like DJ Moore, who has been an absolute milk carton player for the Bears this year. It's been one of the strangest storylines in the NFL. Last week, hey, we're going to come on, we're going to score 2 touchdowns. We're going to be an impact player on offense. And then Luther Burden, the kind of extra pick, right? That everybody was like, hey, you've already got a bunch of receivers. You just picked a pass catching tight end in the top 10. What are you doing picking Luther Burden? Seems like a luxury for a team that has a lot of holes. This is Ben going, yeah, look at Luther Burden last week. Look at Luther Burden the week before. I'm going to throw these young guys the ball, and this is going to drive my passing game. These are my guys in my offense. Here's the fit. Here's the roles I envision for them, and I'm going to utilize them, and this is the vision, right? And you can see Caleb rise with that as the targets have come up, as his understanding as a quarterback who did not do a lot of under center play action through his entire career. High school, college, he did very little of it. And Ben said, this is the thing, like, not my way or the highway, just this is the way, young Padawan. We are going to do this, right? You are going to be good at this. And Caleb went, okay, he bought in. And again, it was fits and starts through the offseason. It is a difficult transition. Turn your back to an NFL defense, turn around, and a guy that, again, like necessarily didn't process NFL defensive shifts as quickly as some of his peers. You have to do it even faster. So a lot of people went, this is a match made in hell. This is terrible. This is going to go like nuclear bomb bad. And Caleb has paid it off again, slowly but surely. Sam, I'm sure your data says this from the early season to now, like a slow and steady increase. That, to Ben's credit, he has been banging the drum for it. No, it's working. He's doing the right things. He's looking in the right places. He is playing quarterback like I want him to play quarterback. And now, last week, you come out in the first half, and it's like, oh, fully operational Caleb Williams. Uh-oh, Happy learned how to putt. Like, this is a thing.
Yeah, and I think the number that shows this the best by far is the discussion both at USC and year one of Caleb Williams was, how is he going to manage pressure? How is he going to manage getting sacks? He is ninth amongst quarterbacks over 100 plays in sack rate this year. He's getting sacked slightly above 4% of the time. Here are the names of people. Jordan Love, who is the king of pressure sack ratio. He never gets sacked. That's his superpower. He is slightly above him this year. Sam Darnold, Michael Penix, Dak Prescott, these guys who are more pocket passers who typically don't get sacked, they are slightly below him. So that change, I think, is the signifier that, soon we're going to see more completions. Soon we're going to see more in structure throws. I think that's the real challenge in this Packers game, especially one where they're probably going to play a lot of 12 personnel. There's going to be a lot of play action passes in which he's going to be asked to step up into the pocket, deliver over the middle of the field, especially given that they may be missing Roma Dunze, discussions about Luther Burden injuries as well. All that being said, I think this could be the pinnacle game of what Caleb could be, given you're not going to have Michael Parsons on the other side, and also given it's kind of all building up to this standpoint.
Yeah, it's huge, and we need to kind of just step back as analysts and acknowledge, like we said this a couple weeks ago on Bootleg, famously, if the Bears beat Green Bay in Chicago to secure the division, their path to the playoffs, Chicago is going to go ballistic.
Yeah.
Like, the cap is going to come off, and rightfully so. This is, again, a decade of frustration being played out on Soldier Field. If they take this from the Packers at home, it is going to be something we haven't seen in a very long time. In terms of the pressure game and Caleb's escapability, which has been absolutely Houdini-like. He is one of one in the NFL right now in terms of how he escapes pressure. I think about Russell Wilson when he broke on the scene and he had that little back turn, right? He could sense sort of preternaturally pressure from the backside and he would spin out. He was the guy that like popularized that move. Now all quarterbacks do it. High school quarterbacks do it, but it was really Russ just spinning out of that pressure, getting free and making another 1.5 seconds for him to go do something good. Caleb is doing that, but he's doing it completely differently. He is ducking sacks. He's a little bit shorter than your average quarterback. His bottom half is incredibly strong. He's
He's Patrick Mahomes in this way. Like that's where my brain goes watching.
Here's the funny thing about that, Lindsay. I fully agree with you on the escapability piece, but this is the piece he gets zero credit for, which is, again, we're talking about data. he is justifiably the fastest quarterback in the NFL, and it's not even close.
94th percentile. So
He-
amongst our sample going back to 2021, or really going back to the NGS era, so 2016, we have readings on him from 2021. And at USC, he was like a 4.6 guy. We have readings on him that would predict that if he were to run a 40 as a result of this season, what he's put on tape, he's a 4.54 guy, one of the fastest quarterbacks in the league this year.
Right. And if you just do it demonstrably off GPS, puck data in the pads, right? He has 4 runs over 20 miles an hour this season. All the other quarterbacks in the league have 4 runs. That's everybody. That's a Hurt Lamar. That's anybody you think is fast as a quarterback. Caleb has more runs than all of them combined at that speed. He is demonstrably the fastest guy on the field at quarterback, and he gets 0 credit for that. He gets a ton of credit for the escapability. Again, that extends drives. It's not just highlight material for NFL films. Like, it is meaningful for this offense in the way that he does it. But I'll go back to what Micah said after the first game, right? They interviewed Micah on field as one of the victors after the game, right? And he was kind of low-key pissed. He was like, I had that guy.
Yeah.
Like, I had that guy a bunch of times and I never got him. Like,
that
should
was
have been
harder than I wanted it to be.
that should have been a 3-sack game for Micah Parsons, if we're being honest. He should have come out of that game with 3 sacks. And against most other quarterbacks in the NFL, save a select few, 4 or 5, he had 3 sacks coming out of that game. He was angry about it. He was like, that guy's tough to catch. And now he's not there on top of that. That is a significant advantage for Chicago in this matchup.
I want to take a moment there and just zoom out. That is why when Sam and I talk about looking at pressures as opposed to looking at sacks, that's literally why. That example is why. Because in that game, you're saying he should have had 3 sacks if it was a less mobile quarterback who didn't do Houdini-like things to get out of those sacks. That's about the quarterback, not about Micah.
Yeah.
So the pressure is the process and the sack is the result. And now, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Want to split this a little bit because we've been talking a lot about the Bears. In what way do you think the Bears need to be most worried about the Packers in this game? Like, where are the holes in this matchup that maybe where the Packers have an advantage?
It's Jordan Love. Jordan Love versus the secondary. The secondary is hit or miss. If they don't get takeaways, they're in big trouble. And they have been getting takeaways at a league-leading rate, which is awesome. But as you all know, especially as data scientists, regression is a thing, and you cannot count on it for sacks, for interceptions, whatever else. And if this defense doesn't get interceptions, they are in deep, deep trouble. And again, it's all because of injury. Like, Jalen Johnson came back. He got one last week, which is great. He's been gone most of the season. Kyler is now probably shut down for the entire season. Literally 2-3 weeks ago, we were on cornerback 6 starting outside for the Bears from, if you're looking at preseason predicted started lineups. Tyreek Stevenson's missed time with injury. Terrell Smith never made the field. They drafted Zay Frazier in the 5th round. I was excited about him as like the 4th or 5th corner. He would have been a starter at this point in the season. Nashawn Wright, who was a cast off from another team, like, is leading them in terms of the secondary. So you can have a good day, but Jordan Love's been playing an extremely high level this year. I really think he has taken a lot of the fat out of his game. His YOLO throws are way down. It used to be like, look, he's going to give you explosive plays in the pass game that are going to win you the game. He's also going to give you negative explosives. And Matt LaFleur was just gambling that one would be greater than the other. And generally he was right. This year, Jordan Love has taken many fewer of those "what are you doing" shots. And the result is, yeah, that's a top 10 quarterback in pretty much any impact metric you want to look at. So if you're looking at mismatches for this one, the Bears secondary has to play up to what they think they are. And trust me, they believe in what they are, but that's got to hold up against one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL.
Do you think there's any vulnerability with the improving but general lack of identity with the Packers offensive line? Do you think that there is a vulnerability that the Bears can take advantage of?
Sam, I would so love to say yes. I would so love to say that the Bears' bevy of high-efficiency pass rushers are going to shred the back. Look, one, I'm a Bears fan. I'm fully aware that historically that's impossible. And two, there aren't a bevy of high impact pass rushers for the Bears. They have not been able to capitalize. It is one of the weaknesses of their defense. Montez has played okay. I would not say he's played up to his contract, but he's played better than anybody else. And they have had fits and starts. Javon Dexter started out pretty hot. He cooled. Grady Jarrett's, quite honestly, and this pains me to say as a huge Grady Jarrett fan, one of the worst free agent signings in the NFL. He has been an absolute nothing. The young guys, Booker's had his flashes. We've seen Hardy have a couple of games where it was like, hey, is this guy going to be the thing? They don't have the ability, regardless of the offensive line, to really take over a game from the defensive line perspective. So I would love to say yes, but every other instinct in me says, yeah, probably not.
What about the wide receivers? Because when Sam started that question, I thought there was a possibility that rather than him saying offensive line at the end, he was going to say wide receivers, because I think that the Packers wide receivers are good enough. Certainly, like you talk about Jordan Love being a strength of the team, and that's an advantage that they have in this matchup. But the wide receiver room has been so interesting to me in that it's just so clumped together. Like you have Christian Watson who does a specific thing, and then I feel like he's the only one who does a very notably specific thing for them. Matthew Golden, you talked about the Bears knocking it out of the park with their, draft with him, even though he hasn't been utilized to the degree that we thought he would be this year. Matthew Golden as a first-round wide receiver has been just like, I can't wrap my brain around what's happening there. He's 5th on the team in target share. Like you draft a guy in the first round, you think that is your target eater. Like that's literally why you draft that guy there. So I'm a little bit confused on a game-to-game basis still, and bummed that this is the case about which wide receiver it's going to be.
Yeah, if you are a fantasy owner of a Packers wide receiver, my condolences. I'm sorry. It's very much like the Shanahan curse, we'll just call it, for wide receivers in San Francisco, where he basically was like, who's projected to be great in fantasy this week? Cool. No targets for him.
Totally.
And it is troubling. And if I was a Packers fan, I would be worried about it because you have a lot of the same guy. You have a multiple of guys that can do the same thing outside of Christian Watson. And Christian Watson, I called him earlier this week on a podcast, the ultimate glass cannon. And that's actually complimentary, not derogatory. I'm concentrating on the cannon part, but the glass has been the problem. When he is not there, the Packers are a completely different animal on offense. Like there's no question about it. He brings so much in so few opportunities to that offense that it really is kind of like offensive team MVP stuff. If Watson's there, no problem. They're very hard to handle. If Watson's not there, they're a lot easier to handle in the passing game because you can sit on stuff. Who's going to burn you deep? Reed, maybe. Like again, but he hasn't been healthy. He's back this last week and definitely made an impact right away. But again, are you worried in the same degree about Reed and Watson down the field? Only if you're nuts and don't watch film. Like Watson pays that off. Reed pays that off, sometimes at a much lower rate. So is it a threat? Sure, but it's the kind of threat, wink, wink, nod, nod, that the defense isn't going to worry about on a down-to-down basis. So, can they – I'm sure they're looking at the secondary and looking at the names and going, oh, we got this. Like, we're going to have a great day. Dennis Allen might surprise them a little bit. They're not going to have a great day, I don't think. Could it be the one big play? Sure. But again, it's outside in Chicago. Last week, famously, it was the 4th coldest game in Chicago history. Like, we're talking about elements that are not great for throwing the football.
Real football, though.
Real football. Yeah, for sure. People say bear weather all the time, which I laugh at because the new stadium is probably going to have a roof, but there you go. In this particular game, in this matchup, it is most likely going to be windy and the ball is going to be very hard and slick, which means, look, if you're counting on big plays out of your passing game, good luck.
By the way, Watson's ADOT, I just looked it up.
It's sick.
It's 19.
Yes.
It is 19. Like,
wait,
no.
No. He literally, so him and Alec Pierce are two players that, okay, I love wide receiver statistics. Me and Lindsay have covered it extremely deeply. Like wide receiver statistics are the holy grail of football statistics.
Mm-hmm.
We know who's good at wide receiver, which is really fun. And whenever someone is breaking the wide receiver statistics, it is insane. So there's two players who have had an excellent yards per route run on a quality of near 20% target share at that A dot. It is Alec Pierce this year, Christian Watson at a limited sample this year, and Christian Watson 2 years ago. No one going back to 2022 or really like 2020, 2016 has even gotten remotely close to those two. That's what a difference Christian Watson makes in this offense.
Yeah, he is the thing. And again, this is the AI matching the eye that you said earlier in terms of when Christian Watson is on the field, what the Packers can do on offense is complete, like it flips 180. Like Jordan's Love, like bombs away. Let's do it. And it pays off. Like you're like, oh crap, that's 50 yards in a chunk again. And without it, there's none of that. Again, Jaden Reed once every 3 games, maybe for 30 yards. It's completely different. And very few players in the NFL, when they are there, change the offense as much. I would argue even CMC is less because Shanahan has found a way to get production out of other running backs. Not the total touches production of CMC. Certainly the whole boat is built out of him in San Francisco, but like, he's still managed a good percentage of that. LaFleur, in terms of the deep passing game, 15 plus yards minus Christian Watson, it is 2 totally different graphs.
Definitely. So, EJ, when going into these big matchups, I always try to pick up 2 statistics or a statistic or 2 that I want to follow during the game. Sure. I think just discussing the Christian Watson element, some of the other elements with the offensive line, I'm really going to track when the Packers are on offense, their pass rate over expected. Because I think if we get locked into the Matt LaFleur, I want to run it in cold weather. Yeah. I think the defense has a chance to get those kind of turnovers, fluky plays, the variance type stuff, just because they're not going to have Jordan Love with the keys in his hand, and he's been playing really well. What I'm really interested in on the offensive side of the ball for the Bears is their early down success rate. I think if they are in 12 personnel, they're able to keep the chains moving. They're not going to get to those positions where, now we don't have to fight with a blitz that is cooked up for Edgerrin Cooper and Quay Walker. And I think that's going to have to be the way that they get pressure. The Packers without Micah Parsons is going to be laid down. Is there any statistic that you are going to look at during the game to get a sense of, the score may be tight, but this isn't looking too good for the third or fourth quarter?
For me, it's the eye test more than a particular statistic of how the Bears offensive line is moving the Packers defensive line on the run. Like, that's it. If, again, in these conditions with everything on the line, that is the quote unquote, and I do put it in air quotes, the easiest play to run, right? Let's run a between the tackles run, right? And if you're grinding out 4.1, 4.5 yards a carry and just blowing the Packers off the ball early in the game and setting up those very dangerous downs for Ben. Like, Ben loves his trick play like I love oxygen. And if he is in 2nd and 3 all day, he's not going to be able to keep his finger off the trigger, right? And that's when you get into a 50-yard chunk play because you just gave up 4, 6, 7, 3, 1, and 11 on consecutive rushes. And you're like, well, guys, all right, strap it up. Here they come. And it's play action. And you go over the top to Loveland versus a linebacker. Like, I like that a lot. Like, that matchup favors the Bears. So I'm going to watch that. Early game and early down success rate for the Bears offensive line, which is playing very, very well against Packers defensive line that is down one of the best players in the NFL. I know a lot of people were on Micah for his run effort in Dallas. That tape didn't back that up. He was a very effective run defender. Again, unorthodox. He chases a lot of it down from the backside, but again, very effective. He's not there. They're going to be patching holes. And if they can't just stand up and stand too, it's going to be a long day for them, regardless of the scoreboard.
Well, it's going to be a long night because this is a primetime game on Saturday. Indeed. Or, I mean, I'm not predicting that it is going to be a long night. I'm just saying the night part was the point that I wanted to make. Just want to clear that up. This will be fun to watch these 2 games. We talked about the Rams Seahawks game on this podcast, also kind of in their own windows. I'm so grateful that these 2 games get to be nationally broadcast, no competition. I can focus all of my attention on both of them. EJ Snyder, it's always so much fun talking football with you. Thank you so much for making time for us.
Hey, thank you for making time for me. I deeply appreciate it.
All right, so Sam, 2 massive games. I feel very ready for those 2. and then once that Bears Packers is put to bed on Saturday night, then I'll shift my focus to the rest of the weekend. But like I like I said, I love the fact that we get a chance to watch these 2 in their own glory. This is going to be a really fun one.
Right. In particular, these 2 games are set up for the SumerSports show. It's all kinds of stuff we've been talking about all year. It's players we've covered for multiple years, going college to pro. And then I think at the end of the day, you get the mid-season where you think you know what the teams are. You can't really figure out. Obviously, they start changing, but we know who these 4 teams are now. They have put together quite a good resume for all 4 of them. This feels like a true playoff atmosphere, and now it's just time to sit back and enjoy.
Very, very much so a true playoff atmosphere. I mean, all 4 of these teams that we've talked about here today have at least 9 wins.
This is the 1 seed. These are the 1 seed games. Like, that's what we will be watching.
I mean, pretty much, right? Like, as of right now, you've got the Rams in Chicago 1 and 2, and then you've got, just by nature of the fact that they have to be below 4 because they're not the division leaders, you have Seattle at 5 and Green Bay at 7. God, San Francisco hanging in there too. This NFC race, NFC West race, rather. I mean, good. The entire thing is like the top 7 teams in the NFC. You've got 3 from the West and 2 from the North. These 2 divisions feel like they're really pulling the whole thing along.
Definitely. And we haven't even talked about the Lions yet. And
I know,
the
who
Lions
are sitting outside right now.
Right. And they've looked good. They've taken every team's best punch, and it hasn't ended up going their way in a lot of the cases, but like they seem as if that's a top 4 team or 5 team in the league as well. So it's just a fascinating how this year has turned out. I think there's a lot of elements of the schedule in particular that led to a lot of teams that have built up their stories over the year kind of continuing that story. You get kind of the drop off of the Chiefs a little bit. Yeah, the Ravens have struggled with injury, but I mean, the Ravens are still in the hunt for an AFC playoff spot. The Bills are looking great. They just got a big victory, and so you go over to the NFC, and it's just a bunch of good teams. I think what's going to come down to is quarterback play, and I think right now the 2 best quarterbacks in the NFC are Matthew Stafford and Jordan Love. And so I think that's why I'm still sticking really close to them. But man, if Caleb starts getting it together, as EJ kind of put the data to, and if Sam Darnold can really activate in a time where we haven't seen him activate in the past, and if that becomes the passing team at volume that they need to be in the playoffs, they certainly can challenge as well.
You put Jordan Love over Dak?
Great point.
Okay, so just two of the best.
I'll put them in the same tier.
Yeah, it's a conversation.
Yeah,
for sure. I had the benefit of being able to quickly scan every NFC team after you said that to see if anybody was left out. What I think is funny about Jordan Love and the way that we're talking about him on this show too is that, like, I'll go on radio shows as a guest, and I don't necessarily get the sense that people in general look at Jordan Love in the same way that we do. I'm not sure. Maybe you feel totally differently, but I don't get the sense that people evaluate him the same way. I think that there are more concerns from people who just, casually watch the games and take it in, and that's what it is, and they don't look at any of the numbers, and none of that is. I remember a few weeks ago, actually, I was looking up some Jordan Love stuff, and I ran into a conversation on Twitter where you see all the mentions that follow afterward, and people were like, stop talking to me about EPA. See, this is the problem, because he's really propped up. Like, every advanced stat says he's good, but then there are moments in games that really flip it for people. It's like the 4th down for Dan Campbell where they lose their mind because he went for it and didn't get it once or something like that. I feel like people feel that same type of way about Jordan Love and are not 100% sure that he is good yet.
Well, I think the bad highlights of Jordan Love overcome what is said. And I think if you get into the playoffs, obviously you don't want a player that can absolutely kill your win probability as a result. The problem is, how many years do you have to put together of being a top 5 EPA per play player on a winning team that doesn't really have an offensive line that data backs as a really good one, and doesn't really have wide receivers that data backs as a good one. And I guess you can point and go look at Kyle Shanahan, his ability to make quarterbacks look really good, but it doesn't feel the same. And now Purdy, I think, is probably not in the love Dak tier that we were talking about. Like, he's probably a hair behind, but it's a little different with Purdy now. But there's just there's too much data at this point to say like he's not a guy who can win games, and or worse yet, that he's a guy who's actively hurting you. And they talk about, like, Toyota-thon December Jordan Love. I mean, there's a reason why that's the case. It's because he's a really good player.
Wait, what do you mean Toyota-thon Jordan Love? What are you talking about?
Wait, are you not familiar with this?
No. I
Lindsay,
mean, yes, I am unfamiliar.
Oh my God, I am so happy you do not. Do you really not know about this?
I don't know about
Okay,
this.
do you know what Toyota-thon is?
Yeah.
Okay, so like when the ads start coming on for Toyota-thon around the Christmas season,
Okay.
Jordan Love is like statistically the best quarterback in the history of the NFL. I'm not joking, and it's the course of like 16 to 20 games at this point. Like, it's absolutely crazy, and it's happening again this year.
I just put in Toyota-thon into Google, and the second thing that auto populates is Jordan Love.
It's a thing. I don't know. I don't know what to
apparently.
tell you.
How did I miss this? I don't know. I feel like I need you to keep me in the loop better. I blame you.
Hey, maybe you got to catch up on local advertising, I suppose, a little bit more. Maybe Toyota just needs to take advantage of this. Then everyone would know about it.
Okay, one more note that I wanted to make real quick before we say goodbye. Chicago's divisional record this year is 1-3. Green Bay's undefeated. I mean,
I think this is the flip of what we talked about with the Chiefs, right? Where it's like the Chiefs look like a really good team, but they haven't won games. And I think this is something, when we go into draft season, Lindsay, that we should really, really closely look at, because this feels like very similar to the discussion we had about the Bucs last year, where the Bucs like doubled down on all this stuff and the team kind of fell apart. But that's the reason, frankly, at this point, why they are still chugging along, or at least somewhat competitive, because they did double down at the wide receiver position. They did double down at all these other places, and now they have a little bit of depth. I think that if we see the Bears take some swings you wouldn't expect from a team who is competing for the 1 seed, I think it's probably because of things like their point differential being low, because they couldn't really win. They couldn't make it happen in their division, and that's not going to change anytime soon. And there's a real case that they have been aided by luck. I believe their Pythagorean win, which basically looks at point differential and uses an optimization on the exponent. There's a formula for it, but basically when it comes down to it, it's point differential. They're more like, a 7 or 8 win team. They're a little closer to 500. And so it's definitely something to keep an eye on in the next couple of weeks, but even more so in draft season, as they try to rebuild a team who looks really great. And I think the best example right now is the Commanders, right? The Commanders were in this same spot, young quarterback, a couple of great acquisitions. It seemed as if they were doubled down. They got older at positions rather than trying to build as if they were a young team that wasn't that good. And then all of a sudden the wheels come off, and they're probably going to have an early draft pick.
Commanders minus 84 on the season in scoring differential.
Yeah,
We could
not
do
great.
this all day. But we're not gonna. We got games right around the corner. Thank you so much for being with us this week. We're back again next week, taking a look at the transfer portal. It'll be Sam and Mike Mayock with you for that one. So if you are a college football fan, there will be some names to keep your eye out for. But also, I think that there's like a bigger picture, as there always is on the SumerSports show, way to evaluate the transfer portal and the process and how it impacts everything else in football. So we'll see you again then. Thank you so much for being with us now. Have a good rest of the week.